Are you tired of struggling with your people? Tired of recruiting the wrong talent? Or tired of building a business where you don't know if everyone really wants to be there? Your people are your most important asset, and getting it wrong, that's the difference between scaling or sinking. Meet Therese Ravell, the HR visionary behind businesses that actually work. She's built a company serving small to medium businesses by fixing the one thing that most leaders ignore, their culture. She's helped companies unlock the power of people, because when you get it right, you don't just build a company, you build a movement. If you've ever wanted $1 million valuation or $1 billion exit, or just a team that actually gives a damn, this one's for you. Now get ready, sip some tea, and welcome to the Sip and Solve podcast, powered by Peppermint IT, where leaders come to change the game. Welcome to Sip and Solve, where we stir a little tech, a lot of business wisdom, and a whole heap of heart. Today, I'm joined by the incredible Therese Ravell, founder of Impact HR, a people-first leader who's passionate about making workplaces work better. Therese brings decades of experience in human resources, but what makes her stand out is her unwavering focus on impact, not just performance, but on people. Whether you're hiring your first team member or leading a growing company, Therese has insights that will transform the way that you think about culture, compliance, and connection. So grab your tea. Got mine.
I've got mine.
And let's dive into a conversation that's all about putting people back at the center of business. Welcome, Therese.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Excellent. So while we were doing our sound check, you were telling me a little bit about green tea. So we're both having green tea today.
Yeah. Matcha.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't know that I actually have spent a number of years living and working in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was first over there, I was a homestay student. And one of my gorgeous homestay fathers used to make a joke about me. When you first got to know me, when you first met me, I was like a beautiful pot of Japanese green tea, mellow and sweet. But like Japanese green tea, if you leave it a little bit too long, you get to know me a little bit too much, you might find out that I've got a little bit of what he used to refer to as degarashi in me. Degarashi is that taste that you get where it can be a little bit bitter sometimes, and some people really, really love it, but it is just that maybe a little bit tart for some people.
Yeah.
And I taught his 2 teenage daughters how to use sarcasm. And he was not used to that. So that's why my nickname while I was living with them was Degarash.
Right, which means tart.
A little bit of that bitter taste, bittersweet.
Right. Oh, very good. So if you leave the green tea in the pot for too long, it gets that bitter flavour.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we got this new tea from T2, which is a Japanese green tea with burnt rice.
Roasted rice,
which has a lovely flavour. But when we made some at home, my partner was like, I didn't think it tasted as nice as it should have. And I think that's exactly why, because we'd left it on for too long.
Exactly. Green tea is all about the water, the pour, and then you don't reuse those leaves. You discard them because otherwise the taste goes that little bit bitter.
Yeah, right. Okay. Which I think is a perfect segue into what we're talking about today, which is people.
Well, hopefully our people are not going to be bitter.
No, and that's exactly what we want to stop happening. Exactly. And that's what you're an expert at, making sure that people are happy and not bitter in our businesses. So I think one of the first things that I would love to explore with you, we're in a similar size. Well, the businesses that we work with are quite often similar sizes, so they're small to medium-sized businesses, where they don't necessarily need, well, they in most instances don't need internal resources like IT or HR, and so outsourcing is an option. So I'd like to get a bit of an understanding from you about what you think about small businesses when there's a conflict between the size of the team and the need of the budget and the cash flow, and at what point do they need to have an outsourced business?
Absolutely. I think one of the really important things for me is that regardless of the size of your business, there is so much expected of us now. We need to be presenting ourselves professionally. We need to have the website. We need to have the HR systems. We need to have all the things. You can't do things, in a half-hearted way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have a limited amount of budget. So when we're working with our small and medium-sized clients, we're often looking at which is the best strategy for you right now so that you maximize your cash flow, how much resource you can get from that, because human resource, it's all about that blend of both human and the right resources, doing the right things in your business to get the best results for you at this particular point in time. And there's no one journey. It's going to be different for every single business that you work with. And so for us, we often start by mapping out the 4 Bs, whether we're building our resources. So occasionally we need to start young. We get people in who don't have a lot of skills, maybe they're interns, and we grow them through our business. And that's the building part. Maybe we're looking at buying them. So when I'm talking about buying, I'm talking about hiring in-house. Because we are making a commitment. We are buying a resource that is going to be a significant part of our team, and they're going to be part long term. So when we're doing that, we're looking at what contribution will they make and how does that contribution give back to us. For most of us, if you think about buying a car, if it was cheaper for us to use a taxi once a month, once a year, we would use taxis. It's when we need that resource on an ongoing basis that we actually buy it.
Yeah, nice.
Sometimes we're thinking about borrowing. Now, for you and I, Lou, that's where we come in. Outsource resources that you need, but you don't need a full head count, or you don't need a fixed head count. Or, as is often the case when we're talking about complex areas of the business, you might need somebody who's doing the strategic, somebody who's doing the day-to-day, and then there's going to be compliance and admin. Now, normally if you buy somebody at that top level, the bottom level for them, that admin work, it's really boring. So you're spending a lot of money to get somebody who's spending 60% of their time doing admin work. That's not ideal for you and your budget, and it's not great for them either. Likewise, if you do it the other way around and you get an administrator, but you expect them to do things at that top level, you know that you're going to end up with mistakes. So the best strategy is actually to borrow that wisdom from the people that are experts in that field. And the final bit, which we are talking about more and more now, is about the bots. Because let's face it, there are lots of tasks in our business, particularly when we're this size, that a bot is a great option. If you were doing an administrative task over and over and over again, you know exactly the outcome you're looking for, you can automate it. And if you can automate it, then that is your cheapest and best option. Because thinking you're going to save money by investing in a team member to do that is not great. They will get bored. And when they get bored, they make mistakes. So your 4 choices there again are build, grow somebody young and enthusiastic with the right skill sets, the right mindset to do it over time, but you don't get instant results. You can buy in the talent that you need at that top level. You can borrow by bringing in what you need when you need it through an outsourced HR company, an outsourced IT company, using the expertise or using other levels within their business to get exactly what you need in the rate that you do. Or the bot, get it automated. Do it once, do it well, and it's going to run your business.
Yeah, amazing. And I assume that there will be various versions and combinations of that over the time as you grow.
Absolutely.
What do you think as a small business, if we're talking to a solopreneur, at what point did they need to get some help to bring in an HR consultant? And I guess the reason why I ask that question is because I think when I went from being a consultant for a very long time to setting up a business, it took me a long time to understand that the people that I was hiring didn't have the same passion for the business that I did. I was like, what do you mean? You don't want to work an extra 10 hours a week for nothing? Because that's what I do. And I guess, HR is a really difficult part of that, because it's really about understanding people and understanding their motivations and making sure it's very clear to them about what their job is and what the expectations are. And like you said, in a small business, that one person is often doing 10 things that aren't their job, and 10 things that are their job. And, what would be your advice around your first hire, for example?
So there's a lot to unpack in that. So I'm going to break it down into a couple of different sections. Yep. First is, what do I hire first? And what I'm going to say to you is that if there are things that you can automate and you know you can automate them, once you write the email sequence once, it's automated. If there's a piece of work that it's the same, it's simple, it's not complex, the first purchase is actually borrowing some expertise to make sure your bots are really, really working for you. Get a little bit of investment in that area, because it's going to streamline the rest of your business. And the more time that you are spending on things that, I'm going to say it, are below your pay grade. If you are emptying your garbage bin, if you are the person who's picking up every single phone call, I want you to really have a look at that, because if that brings you out of high value work, it's not ideal for you or your business. So, think about what is below your pay grade. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because the pieces of work that people love doing, I have somebody who answers our phones and they're amazing. That's great. That is their passion. Allow them to be the expert in their field and passionate about what they do. Find the things that are right for you to do and really focus on them. So getting rid of the bits that take you away from being the best version of your business, that's the first piece. The second piece you kind of asked about was in regards to, when do I bring them in? And I'm going to say, and lots of people balk at this, but probably before you really think you do. So one of the biggest things for us is when we go in, we often find that we're working with a business owner who has downloaded an employment agreement off the internet. It might only be 12 months old, but the law has changed in that time. And so we now have an employment agreement in place that actually has illegal terms and conditions in it. Getting a little bit of help up front can save you a lot of time and effort later when you have to do those transitions and you have to negotiate with people. I'm sure you found in your industry as well that people come to you and there's not one thing, but they've got 5 pieces of software that are doing the same thing and they don't talk to each other. It's the same sort of thing. If we can just invest that little bit of extra money up front, it can make a big difference later. And I know that that's hard, but I would say if you're thinking about it and you're planning it out, start putting aside just a little bit of money to buy those luxuries, to borrow that expertise so that you get the platform to leverage your business successfully.
And what about when that person starts? Because I was listening to a podcast recently where that person said they hired people and they got that person to write the processes. So the person came in, the person writes the processes, what do you feel about that? Because I feel like I did that. If you're doing the build option, that's not really going to work, is it? Because they don't, if you're training them, then you're really the one that needs to be writing the processes. And when I talk about processes, from my perspective, it's obviously the tech processes, but from your perspective, it's the job description and the policies and procedures around working and the expectations.
So there's multiple different ways to do this, and there's no one right answer. But what the key ingredient in all of them is the right person is the one who's doing the double checking. So as you said, if it's really complex and you've got to make sure you've got all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed, whether that's IT, HR, legal, then the right person to write the process may be the one with the most knowledge, but they might also be the one who's most time poor. So when I'm doing things, I will bring somebody new into the team. As part of my onboarding them, I will actually spend time with them and we will go through things, we'll record it, we'll video it. And so that video is there for them to use as a reference and a resource. Then I will have them write the process.
Yeah. Okay.
But that process comes back to me and I'm the one who does the final double check.
Yeah.
And if I've written something into my version of the process that they don't have in theirs, I know there's a learning gap.
Yeah.
But then I'm only focused on that learning gap. I don't have to redo the whole training process.
Yeah.
This bit is where I focus.
Yeah.
So once again, that saves me time and it saves me effort and it stops them from switching off, because if I'm telling them the same thing 3 times and the first 20% they've nailed, but I'm going back over it, by the time I get to the next piece that I really want them to remember, they're zoned out.
Yeah.
Off with the pixies. So I'm just coming back into that piece that I really need them to be focused on. The second thing is that if I'm doing this well enough, I'll be able to see when my people are ready to train the next team of people who come through.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And then once again, the person who does the double check is either my senior person or me, to make sure that if my senior person maybe is not so good about delivering the training yet, I can coach them.
Yep.
But if the person themselves has maybe not understood some of it, I can provide a second way of looking at that same problem. So hopefully through that process, they're actually getting a different way of hearing the same information, which makes it cleaner, clearer, and gets us to the results that we need.
Yeah, amazing. And that also leads me to, I guess, believe about your business, given that you have such a robust onboarding system for your team members, that your clients are also getting a very consistent onboarding process. So when you're taking on a new client, what kind of onboarding process do you have? Because I was reading something the other day that was all about, when you're bringing clients on, the onboarding part is where you're doing the hardest work, because that's what's making them happy and feeling important. And so, as you go through a client journey with a client, you're not trying to save them at the end because they've been unhappy. If you do the onboarding at the beginning.
Yeah.
then you're ahead.
And there's a lot of things about that, right?
Yeah.
Most people are looking to make a change because something is not working for them.
Yeah.
So if we bring them on in a way that helps them feel like, oh my God, this is wonderful, that problem that I was trying to solve is already starting to go away, then that's going to open up that relationship and make it easier. Yeah. So yes, client onboarding processes are really important. For my team and I, that involves meeting the team that's going to be their team.
Yeah.
Now, we always have 2 people minimum working on any client, because if I'm the primary and somebody else is secondary, what happens if I'm on holidays? You can't say to an employee, don't have a bad day, Therese's on leave. They need to be able to access somebody that they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
They need to be able to access the support when it's right for them, not when it's right for you. So for me, it's very much about making sure they know who the team is.
Yeah.
When we're working with clients, we often do and particularly when we're doing outsourced HR, we actually do a presentation to the whole team. Yeah. This is who Impact HR is. This is why we've been selected to be your HR people. This is how we can help you as an employee, you as a manager, and this is what we're doing for the business as a whole. Yeah. Because those 3 things are all slightly different, but they're all interconnected. And you have to weave them in together in a way that makes sense. Yeah. We also need people to understand that we are that bridge between business results and individual results, because you said at the beginning, we don't want our people to be bitter. And that's very much it. We want our team to love coming to work. But it's not as easy as, here's some money, come to work and love your job. We actually need to create that environment. And then once we've created it, nurture it and continue to grow that environment. So what made me happy yesterday, it will change over time. And we need to grow and adapt and do things. So the people that we're working with, both the owners, the managers, and the employees, or if you're a solopreneur hiring your very first person, what's right for you might be different to what's right for somebody else. You might need more hand-holding and more comfort and confidence that this is going to work for you.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so we're going to take a little tea break. All right. So in this little tea break, do you need more tea poured?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I'm good too.
And
We've
it
got
will have
nice
gone
big
Degarash
cups.
by now. So.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's good to know. So just in our little tea break, I like to get a little bit nosy about what people use for their technology stack in their business and personal. So what I'd like to know is, do you use, it's a bit like when you're growing up in Australia and back in the day, your dads talked about whether they were Ford or Holden people.
Yep.
So it's a little bit like that. So do you have a PC or a Mac?
I'm a PC gal, but my daughters and my husband are all Mac.
So you're the outlier in
I
the
am
family.
the outlier.
Are you the most productive one, would you say?
I have some amazingly talented people around me. I do think I'm highly productive, and I do think that to be able to cope, first of all, in my corporate life, but then running a business, I've developed a lot of hacks and technology tips. But I would not like to call that. Too hard.
Well, that's very diplomatic of you. What about phone? Do you have an Android or iPhone?
I'm an iPhone girl.
iPhone.
So I do have some Apple technology.
Excellent. Do you have a smartwatch?
Yes.
What kind of smartwatch do you have?
Apple Watch.
Okay. And what about on your mobile phone? What would you say would be the app that you use the most?
Oh, that's a tricky one. It would probably be Harvest. I use Harvest to help me track time and to manage resources. And so I do pop into that quite a lot. And so it would probably be Harvest.
Okay.
But I do also have a to-do list that it has various lists, like a shopping list and everything else. And that is my personal, like everything I need to remember throughout the entire week is listed into this shared to-do list.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the feel confident that you're the most productive person in your family, even though you're too modest to admit it.
You haven't seen how my daughters work.
Well, chip off the old block, I'd say. What about social media?
So my favorite platform and the one that I use most for business is LinkedIn. We do have Facebook and Reels, but not where I spend as much of my time.
Okay. And then on your PC, what is the thing that you use the most each day?
That'd definitely be Word.
Word.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess you're writing contracts and policies.
Contracts, policies, plans, you know, what are we going to be doing in this business over the next 3 years, and which people do we need, and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I spend a lot of time kind of documenting and planning forward. Excellent. Because you know my favorite thing is precrastination, not procrastination.
Yes, I
do.
And
pitching it out 5 years and then breaking it down into smaller and smaller pieces so it gets easier.
Yeah, I love
that precrastination I often do in small chunks in my Word, because I can just pick pieces up and move them about as they
in a table or just in a document.
Just in a document.
Right.
Pick that box up, because I have some text boxes. I can pick that box up and rearrange it so it makes more sense now.
Awesome. Great. So that concludes my tech tip nosiness. Okay, so another question that I have for you is around the hybrid work culture, because there's a lot of discussion about that at the moment.
Yes.
About people coming back to the office or continuing to work from home. What are your thoughts?
I think we actually have to be really honest with ourselves, and it's never going to go away now. You know, before COVID, people had a perception and they were able to point to the fact that, you know, we work better when we were all together in the same spot. But the truth is, through COVID, we proved over and over and over again that it's not about where you are, it's about, you know, how you're working together and what the outputs are. are. So one of my favorite sayings is outputs over location.
Yeah, okay.
There are people who don't work as well remotely and who need you to check in more. There are people who actually being in the office and the noise and the lights and everything else is too confronting. And they work much better in their own private space, setting their own calendar, knowing and understanding who your team is and how they operate. And then within reason, you can't build a program that fits everyone, but what are the bits that they like best and how do you blend that together? That's really important. So we have team members up in Queensland, we have people down in Tassie, and yet we feel really, really connected because we have certain traditions, certain things that we do, and that helps us to, be able to feel comfortable just to put our hand up and reach out and do things. We have brainstorming sessions where somebody will pop something into a chat or into email to go, Brains Trust just need this, what's everyone else thinking? And it's funny how many times something like that will go and then they'll say, oh, just had another thought. Oh, I've answered my own question. But they just needed to know that there was somebody there who was also going to feed back to them. So it's about what is the right strategy for you and your team. And there is no one perfect fit. And just because it worked well for your team previously does not always mean that that's going to stay like that forever. I used to have one way of doing our team meetings, and when we had a couple of extra people join the team, their process was a lot more structured and they needed that change. So we talked about it and I went, okay, let's do it your way. And so we now use Loop because that I'm a Microsoft girl. So the notes are all there. It comes up every time. The to-do actions go straight into my to-do list. Don't have to add them personally. They just magically appear. And then I know what I've got to get done to make my team happy. And when I have a happy team, I have a happy life.
Well, that's a good new saying, isn't it? Happy team, happy life.
Yes.
We need to make it rhyme.
I can't say happy work wife, happy life. That would put me into a category that's not so great. Because I love all my team.
Yes, it does. Loop is great. You're like my dream productivity queen. Love it.
I love the fact that I'm still teaching my team new tech hacks, things that save time. If you can save just a couple of seconds each time you touch a document, makes your life easy.
Yeah, totally. Love that. Okay, what would you say would be one of the most common problems that you see with small businesses and their people?
I think because when we are working in small business and we work very closely with our team, sometimes as founders, we just expect that everyone can read our mind. It's so close to our heart and we spend so much of our lives doing it. It's almost like there's this assumption that the day you start working for me, you get a mind reading certificate that goes straight into my brain and that connection is like direct. And so, we really do need just to take a deep breath, come back into what does good look for me? What does successful look like to me? What are my expectations right now? And what are my expectations going to be in 6 months or a year from now? So that people know that journey that they're going on, particularly if you're hiring somebody new or somebody's stepping up into a new role in your business. You've got to take them through that journey because without that process, they're going to make it up themselves. And then that's when disappointment hits. Because we thought that they could read our mind. We thought that they were so aligned to us, but they're not. And it's the same with your family and your partner, right? As a mum, I expect you to pick your towel up and hang it on the bathroom.
Good luck with that.
As long as I've said it and I've made it clear why that's important to me, most of the time it's going to happen. Occasionally not. But if I don't actually verbalize what I need, why it's important, then it's not going to be important for somebody else to help me.
Yeah, fair enough. And how often do you think we should be catching up with our staff?
Well, this is another one of those very personal things. And I'm going to just skip back into my corporate days because I ran very big teams. You know, I had more than 50 people in Australia who reported up to me. And then I was also responsible for the head of region for all the countries in Asia Pac. So those meetings depended on what was necessary and what was going on for the individual. I did have some people who actually needed Monday morning check-in, midday, Wednesday, wrap up on Friday. So I was actually meeting with them very briefly, maybe 15, 20 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah.
I would have somebody else that I was meeting with, and I was maybe meeting every 2 weeks, but I'd spend 2 hours with them because then they were ready to take that next big leap and do that next kind of work for the next 2 weeks. But they needed more time now just to make sure everything was aligned so that we could do that. And then I had others which were probably the weekly catch up for about an hour. I tended not to do too much longer than a month. Because the faster you can give feedback, the faster you can realign, and the less likelihood of your version of what's expected and their version kind of going off in different directions. So we need those tangents to be really close. So working with the individuals to work out what exactly works, and then making it clear, putting that system into your calendar is really important.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is it's really important to have that conversation with the rest of your team because fair and equal are two different things. What is fair for one person so that they're getting constant little bits of changed information might be that they need to meet with you every morning for 10 minutes. That doesn't mean that that is not fair to the person who catches up with you every 2 weeks and has a longer chunk of time. The attention to each person is equal, but the fairness is about finding a way that works for the individual you're working closely with.
Yeah, amazing.
So fair and equal, similar but really different.
I had a really good question in the middle of that, but I definitely will be making some changes around our meetings and scheduling our time around here. Is there anything else you would like to add that you think is important for us to know as small businesses with our staff? Particularly, I think, around the time that it's right. Because I guess when you think about HR, you do often think about corporate businesses and large teams, and to need HR, I have to have, 30 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 people. But really, how important is it, and how soon really should we be setting up? I mean, I kind of feel like at the end of this conversation, it's almost one of the first things that you should be doing when you have a business is to map out your HR strategy and your people strategy. Right?
And as I said, your HR strategy doesn't have to be all about hiring a team. It might be about who you need as VAs. It might be about which resources are you always going to outsource? Do I think I'm ever going to need an in-house lawyer? I might not need an in-house lawyer, but I need to know a lawyer. I need to have somebody who does that work for me. Now, at the moment, lots of people are probably going, oh, that's not HR. It's absolutely HR. What resources do I need to know across my business? What is my product and service? How do I market it? How do I sell it? How do I make sure I'm legally protected? How do I make sure I've got the right money coming and going at the right time, legally compliant? If I've got all these people, do I have contracts in place for them? And as I said, HR is always about the right people, not necessarily in your direct hire engagement strategy. But if I've got these people working with me, do I actually have contracts in place? That's HR. All those bits, they all add up to HR. So where am I going to get the resources that I need? How can I do that effectively? What is it that's going to move the dial on my business? If I add in a marketing person and I've got all these leads flowing in, but they do nothing, what's the point? How do I transition from outsourced HR, outsourced marketing into what am I going to do next so that I can convert that, so that I can move to the next stage. At the end of the day, it's about you delivering your product in a way that people want to, with pleasure, send you those emails that say, I just paid your bill. Thanks. I love working with you. That's what it's all about. Yeah. So when we do that, that's how we break down what resources you need when. When you don't start with that in mind, you spend a lot of time churning and burning. We talk about de-hatting for success. We all know that we shouldn't multitask. We all know that when we multitask, we don't do things well and we drop the ball on things. Yet that's what we tend to do in small business because we don't have the budget. But if we can work out the first piece of the puzzle, get it done well, then we grow. And then we can keep growing because we can scale, because we built the systems to make it all work. Yeah. And it shouldn't be hard.
Amazing. So I think I hear a lot with small businesses and medium businesses and even big businesses, when somebody moves from a role where they're very hands-on in whatever they've been trained to do. So they're an engineer and they know how to do engineering and they're amazing, or they're a tech person and they're great at, put hands on the tools. And then all of a sudden you're in a management position where you've got people underneath you, and then you grow the business and then you've got a lot of people underneath you. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with people. So you're spending most of your day not doing what you were trained to do. All of a sudden now you're thrown into this position where you've got to look after people, and people say, I just don't like people. Staff are so difficult, and this and that. And I think if you've taken a lot of the strategies that you have, then hopefully you can avoid those problems because your staff are not difficult because they know the rules. But do you have to, clearly you're a people person if it's your job to be a people person. But if you're not a people person, how do you become a people person? How do you deal with, that? And I'm sure you hear it a lot as well.
Yeah. I hear all the time, love my business, hate my team. Yes. And that just breaks my heart because, every time somebody's feeling like that, they actually then start to limit their potential. Yeah. They don't want to take on more people because they see more headaches rather than seeing more help. Yeah. That just makes me want to cry because the gift that everyone who goes into business has gone into business because they've got something precious to share with another person. Yeah. We're a person. We sell our product, or we give our product, or we deliver our product to a person, and we need people to help us do that. Yeah. That's why there's HR in the world. You cannot have a successful, thriving business without people around you to help you achieve that goal. Yeah. The problem is that if we don't have those skills in HR or in leadership or in management, the headaches happen. But once again, if you were to take me and put me in front of the IT systems of a company and say, Therese, fix this, I would have a meltdown. So first of all, get the help that you need. Know that there are courses out there. They don't have to be hard. They don't have to be, committing to the rest of your life. We run an amazing course called Leading with Impact, which is 1 hour a week. Yeah. And it gradually breaks down what we believe. I've been running Impact HR now for 16 years. Yeah. We believe that these are the things that are going to change your relationship with people. Yeah. And if you can bring them on board just 1 hour at a time during the week, by the end of that process, life just feels lighter. Yeah. It gives you the way to reframe something that's happening, and it feels like it's happening to you, at you personally, to be, the piece that didn't, this is, if I do this bit differently, I'm going to get a different result. Yeah. Wow, look at that. I've implemented that over the week. Oh my God, I love my team now. And I hear that story and I just, that's what being in Impact HR is all about. Yeah. Helping people who say, I'm not a people person, go, actually, I am a people person. I love it.
Yes. Yeah, amazing. Well, I think that that's an excellent bit to finish on.
Thank you.
Because I think that that's a great message. So I've written down, help, not headaches.
Help, not headaches. That is what our team is supposed to be.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Therese.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Awesome. Okay.
Well done.
See ya.